So we've done our sidebar and the footer and the post loop. It's time now to do the header, and it should eventually look like this. And I always like to remind you that this is not the best designed template, so the header might not look that pretty, but we just need to focus on the functionality. So for this lecture we'll see how to add this search form and the site title, and for the navigation it's a long enough topic to have its own section. So let's go back to our template, and in our folder let's open header.php. And before starting I just want to let you know that I've installed Font Awesome using npm. So npm install and this command here, and I added --save to be saved in the package.json, and also I loaded the fonts in our bundle SAS file, and that's in these 3 lines. It's worth pointing that if you would like to add some third-party library like Font Awesome, it's the best practice to bundle them in your CSS file. You might think maybe it's easier to add a CDN link or something, but if you read the theme requirements on ThemeForest, they mention that you shouldn't use CDNs, and any third-party library you include, it should be bundled in your files. So that's why I included them in the SAS file, and when we compile our SAS, they are bundled in our final CSS file. So anyways, let's go to our header, and now let's create our main header. So I'm gonna use a header tag with a role of banner, and I'm gonna give it a class to add a margin, u-margin -bottom and 40. And let's create a div to wrap all of our content in a div. So let's add a div with an ID content that will open after the header, and then close it just before the footer. So here, so we'll have header and then the div with ID content and then the footer. Let's now add some classes that I styled for the header. So we have div class c-header, and then we have a div with a class of o-container and u-flex, and these are usually the classes for flexbox, align justify and align middle, and you can check these classes in the SAS files. And then we have a div for the logo with a class c-header _ logo. And then in the theme options section we'll learn how to get the logo from the user as an image, but for now let's add the site title. So an anchor link with the class c-header _ blog name, and then href open PHP, and then echo the home URL, and this is the URL of your website. Let's close PHP, and then inside the anchor tag we'll open another PHP tag and display the using the blog info function. We will show the site name. So these are template tags that display information about your website. So let's close the PHP tag and then close the anchor tag. And if you are paying attention, you will notice that we forgot something important here. Need to escape URL for the link and escape HTML for the blog name. So let's see how that looks like. And we have our header now and the site name, and it links to the home page. Let's now add the search form. So after the logo class, we'll open a PHP tag and use a template tag called getSearchForm. And it takes in a boolean whether to echo the HTML of the form or just return it. So we need to echo, so I'm just gonna give it true and close, and let's see what this looks like. And it's a search form, as you can see. And WordPress automatically generates the HTML for this one, but you can create your own markup, and you will see how in a moment. So let's type just anything, and this will take you to a link with an S parameter here in the URL. So for these functions that WordPress generate HTML for, you can add some lines of code in your theme to make WordPress use HTML5 syntax for HTML that it generates, like this search form. So to do that, we have to type something in functions.php. And let's add a new file in the lib folder. And let's call it theme-support.php. And let's include this file in the functions.php, theme-support. So here we have to create a function. Let's open PHP tags. And don't forget your prefix, theme name. And let's call it theme support. And we'll attach this function to a hook, an action hook. So add action. And it's called after setup theme. And then the function name, and we'll ignore the other parameters. So this action is used to add support for features that are not supported by default by WordPress. So for example, one of these features is, remember in the very early lectures when we created this header.php file, and we mentioned that we don't need to add a title tag, and WordPress will generate it automatically using the app-head hook, right? But if you go now to the website, you will find no title, you'll find the URL, and that's because you want to explicitly tell WordPress, I want to support this feature. And that's through the after setup theme action. So inside the function, we can call a function called add theme support, and it takes a feature. So the feature for the title is title tag. So let's save and see our title now. And as you can see in the tab now in the header, there is a title, and it's automatically generated by WordPress. You don't need to do anything. So some other features that we will need to add is, you know, when you create a post, you have an option to add the thumbnail, and this is not supported by default. So we have to explicitly mention that we would like to support this. So post thumbnails, and we'll add other features throughout the course, but let's add the one that we need now, which is the HTML5. So it's called HTML5, and then it takes an array of things that you want to support HTML5 for. So we have our search form. There's also the comments or comment list, comment form. We have the gallery and the caption. So let's save now, and now our our form will support HTML5 syntax. So that was just a side note. Let's carry on now, and we need now to customize this search form in order to look like this one. And that's why I actually installed Font Awesome to use this search icon. So let's go ahead now and create our custom form. So in header.php, we call getSearchForm. And getSearchForm, as I mentioned, will generate the HTML for the search form. But before that, it will actually search your theme folder for a file called search form.php. So in the root theme folder, create a new file called search form.php. And let's just type some text here. And now let's refresh, and now we have our file loaded. So now in the search form file, we can create our own form with our own markup. So let's do that. So to create a search form, you'll simply create a normal HTML form. And this form will submit a GET request. So the method is get, and the action will be your home URL. So let's open a PHP tag and echo escape URL and home URL and the root path. And let's remove the extra arguments, we don't need these. And close PHP and close the form tag. So we now have a form, and now we need a search input. So it's also a simple HTML input of type search. And this is important, the name should be S, because this is what WordPress uses in order to filter your posts with this parameter. So let's close the input, and then we can have a button to submit. So it should have a type submit. And let's see now. So we now have a search input and a button, and it takes you to the URL, home URL, with the S parameter. So WordPress now will know that if you request a URL with an S parameter, that you are in search page, and it will display the search page template and filter the posts against the search query. So that's actually all you need in order to create a search form. Anything else you add is just to add extra functionality to the form. So one minor improvement we can do is add a placeholder. So now we don't have an empty input here, but it would also be nice to have here, instead of the placeholder, the value of the current query if we are in a search page. So to do that, we can add a value, and inside PHP tags, we call a function called getSearchQuery. And that will get the search query if there's one, and an empty string otherwise. But notice that this is a value of the value attribute. So it's an HTML attribute, so we should use escape attribute before echoing it. And now we'll have the value that we typed. Let's type another one, and it's still there. So for me, the reason I wanted to create a custom search form is to add my CSS classes and to add the icon. So instead of wasting your time and type the whole thing here, I'm gonna paste it and just walk you through it real quick. So I added a class c-search form, and a label with some classes and some accessibility bit here, screen reader text, because a label needs a text, but in my case I didn't want to display it for styling issues, so I put in a span and give it a class screen reader text. And then we have our inputs with a class and the placeholder, and the placeholder of course should be escaped and translated. So I used _x here. If you remember, _x will give context to your translated string. And then I have my button and my icon here, the I tag. And then, because also for accessibility a button should have a text, so I added a span with a screen reader text class, and inside of it the text for the button. So you can take a look at this form, and if you have any questions, let me know. I just thought it would be a waste of time to type all of it on screen. So in the next lecture we'll discuss how to create the navigation and mega menus, and pretty much everything you will need to know about navigation in WordPress. So see you in the next section.